Hi and welcome to the second part of this Blender 2.8 beginners tutorial. In the second part we're going to continue with our 3D golden dragon. So to do that, let's open up Blender and we'll go to File, Open, and I'll go to my desktop, and inside my desktop I've got the folder, and here we've got this 3D dragon 01 file. So we'll open it and we'll go into the render view so we can see the dragon here that we created before. You remember we used that SVG file. We'll go to File, Save As, and we're going to make a version 2 of it. So let's just save it as version 2. So we keep our original file. Now we've got a second version. We can do what we want, and if we make any mistakes, we can always come back to that first version. So let's click on this curve, and this curve right now is not really meaningful. So let's call it dragon, D-R-A, dragon, and we're going to call it dragon main. This is going to be our main dragon. And we're going to click on the eye here where the sphere is. This is the sphere that surrounded the dragon. So we're just going to click on the eye to hide it temporarily. And then we'll press actually number 7 on our keyboard. Number 7 takes us into the top view. And we want to zoom in a little bit here. And then we're going to click on this main dragon, move to the viewport and press Shift and D to duplicate it, and then hit the Enter key. So now you can see there's 2 dragons here. This second dragon, this one here, we're going to click on it and drag it up, and then we're going to double click here and name it Dragon Light and Fire. So we're going to call it Dragon Light and Fire, and we'll click on that and we'll go to the material. So let's go to the material here, and we're going to click on this SVG matte and just remove it, and we're going to click a new material and we're going to set it to a emission shader, and we'll set the color. You can pick any color you like. Maybe we'll go for like I'm going to go for a red, but you can pick any color you like, and I'm going to set it to around 10. And then we're going to go back to the modifier here, and we're going to set the thickness all the way down to like 0.2 will do. And then we're just going to drag that so it's in the middle of this object here, like in the center point here. So if we turn back on the sphere, click on this eye, that turns the sphere back on, and press 0 on your keyboard so it shows you what the camera sees. Then you can see you've got like this red line going through the dragon in the center, which I think looks pretty cool. So if we render it out, we can see what it looks like. And then that red line will also, because it's an emission shader, it's also going to give some of the bloom effect, right, the glow. So I think that looks pretty cool. And you can easily go back to the light dragon here and go to the material, and then you can click on this red color. You can change it to like purple or green or whatever color you want, whatever suits you. But I'm going to leave mine on red. I think I want red. Maybe, I don't know, maybe blue looks quite cool as well, but I'll leave it on red for now. Okay. Now, with that dragon light and fire object selected here, let's just go to File, Save first. Let's File, Save as version 3, because we've done some work, and let's just save it as version 3. So we've got a third version now of this work, and we're going to click on this dragon light and fire. We're going to go to Object, Quick Effects, and Smoke here. In fact, we've done something wrong here, right? So what we need to do is press Ctrl Z to undo this, or just go to Edit, Undo. And what we need to do is duplicate this for one more time. This dragon light and fire, we need to click on it, press Shift and D to duplicate, and then hit the Enter key. So really the first one we can just call it Dragon Light. This one, the original one, we just call it Dragon Light, and this one we should call Dragon Fire. Because if you apply the smoke simulator to this original one, it gets rid of the light, and we don't want that. So this Dragon Fire, now we can go to Object, Quick Effects, and Smoke here. So we maintain that red line going through it, and this will be our fire simulator now. This is going to be like fire here, right? Let's have a look here. So we've got the smoke domain. Okay. So what we can do now is go to the let's just see what we're going to do here. So let's go to the smoke domain here, and we're going to hide this sphere again. So let's just hide it, and we'll press 0 on our, no, we'll press number 7 to go into the top view, and we can see this yellow box is the smoke domain. We want to make it a bit wider and a bit taller. So to do that, we're going to press S to scale, and then we're going to press X on our keyboard, and that we can scale it out. So we want to scale it out to about this big here, roughly this width here, and then we want to scale it on the height a little bit. So we press S to scale and then Y, and we scale it out on the width here like this, on the height. Now we can press 0 again on our keyboard. That takes us back into the camera view, and we can turn this sphere back on, and we can see the domain now. We can see this yellow box is going to be the smoke domain, and this is this other box here. We click camera, we can see what the camera is going to see here, right? So just click back on the smoke domain. We can just rotate it around, and if we go to the smoke physics here, and for now what we'll do is click this dissolve and set the dissolve to around 15 and turn off slow here, and in here we're pretty much going to leave everything, but we want to set this to the end frame. For now we're going to set it to 100, and then this end frame here, the actual animation end frame, we're going to set that to 100. Actually, we're going to set it to 140. So we're going to bake the smoke and the fire up to 100, and then we're going to do some extra work at the end just to animate or do something, right? So let's just go to File, Save, and we'll go back to this Dragon Fire here. We'll click Dragon Fire and click on the physics here, and we set the surface all the way down to 0.5 here, and we need to set the flow to smoke and fire, smoke fire. In fact, we're just going to set it to fire. Let's just try, actually we set it to smoke and fire here, smoke fire. We'll click back on the smoke domain here, back on this smoke domain. We'll go to the material, and we'll set the surface to principled volume here. Okay, make sure principal volume's there. Then we're going to go to the render settings and turn on volumetrics. And let's just go to File, Save. Then we can go back to the smoke domain here and go to the physics here. And in theory, we should be able to just click Bake All Dynamics. It's going to do it very quick, and we're going to see, we should see some smoke coming out of here, right? You can just about see it. It's very faint because the lighting isn't quite right in here. So let's press Shift A and insert a light, point light. We'll insert a point light here, and then we're just going to click on the blue. So you need to make sure move is selected here. Click on the blue arrow and just drag it up so that it's above the dragon, yeah. Then you'll be able to see the smoke coming out of the fire here, smoke and fire, right? So it looks a bit rubbish. That's because it's at a really low resolution, but when we're doing animation work, we don't really want to bake anything at really high resolution, because it just takes too long to bake, and then your animation will slow down, and Blender becomes a little bit sluggish. It's nothing to do with Blender really. It's trying to do a lot of calculations, and my computer's not the quickest, so I normally bake it at a really low resolution like this, and then come back afterwards and rebake it after at a much higher resolution. So let's click on the smoke domain here. And what we'll do is we'll go to the shading here, shading, and in shading at the moment we're looking at the world, but we want to switch it over to object. So let's just zoom out a little bit here. So we've got these three boxes, and we're going to drag this, let me see, you need to click on the smoke domain, yeah. Make sure smoke domain is selected here, and you should see these three boxes. I just want to drag this up so it's a bit easier for you to see. I'm going to zoom out a little here and go to the render view. So normally I would have this a little bit smaller, but I want to be able to zoom in so you can see a bit more clearer what's going on. And what we'll do let's see, this principled volume here on the surface, we can ignore this one, so I'm just going to drag it out of the way for the minute, and we're going to work on these ones here, this the one that's connected to the volume. Yeah, so I'm going to press Shift A and go to shader and click add shader, and then I'm going to drag it and overlap it here across this line, this horizontal line. I'm going to click here, so it will get connected like this. Let's just drag this one out of the way down here somewhere. So we can see this a bit clearer now. So we've got the principal volume, the volume's connected to this shader, and then this shader is connected to this volume here. And I want to add an attribute, so we need to tell Blender what are we targeting. So we click attribute here, and we want to target the flame, and we're going to add a let's see, a color ramp, right? So under, let's see, where is it? Under converter, we're going to add a color ramp here, and we're going to connect the factor to the factor here, and then we're going to connect this color to this other shader here. So we're going to mix them together. Now you can see the dragon here with this grey shaded smoke, right, on this fire. But really that's down to this linear color here. So if we click on this white one on this far edge, if you click on this little tab that you can pull, click on it, and then this will change to this white color, and we want to check, maybe make it red, right? Something like this. And then you can click the plus sign, and then it will add another little slider here, and we can click on that one, drag it towards the right hand side here. We'll click that, and maybe we'll add some, let's see, some like you can see what it's doing to the flame here, right? It's changing its color. So really I want like an orange color in there, and then we'll click it one more time and drag it closer to this side, and on this side I'm going to pick something like purple, but I'm going to reduce the alpha on it. So something like this, and maybe we'll put the red this side and the purple here. So you can play around with these settings and just experiment what effect it will have on the actual smoke and fire. So I might set orange here, red here, and then this purple should really be on the outside, right? So we'll click on the purple one and then increase its alpha. It's a little bit hard to see, but we should get like a little purple around the edge here on the outside of the flame. Because it's such a low res, we might not see it too well. But that's the settings that I'm going to use for now, and then we can always come back and change this later. It's not a problem. So this is basic setup for the flame. Let's go back to the layout, and in the layout we want to just basically do an animation of this dragon spinning, and maybe we'll zoom in and out and do some camera work. So let's press 0 to see what the camera sees. This is exactly what the camera sees at the moment. You can see like this faint box, right? So we press F12. Normally what I try and decide is what is going to be the first frame of the animation, right? So I want the dragon to really be facing, front facing on the camera. So we'll click on the camera here. This yellow box shows what the camera sees, and we're going to press N on our keyboard, the letter N, and we're going to lock the camera to the view. Now we can use our middle mouse button to rotate, we can use it to zoom in and out, and we can hold down the shift key and the middle mouse to pan it, right? And we just want to set it up so it's on a slight angle, maybe something like this, and then we'll press F12, and we say that's what the dragon's going to look like on the very first frame. So you can pick whatever position you want, whatever angle you want, it's up to you, but I want it to be quite front facing. And then I'm going to press the record button here. All right, press the record button. But now I want to click on this this fire dragon here, dragon fire. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on dragon light, and then I'm going to finally hold down the shift key and click on the dragon main. So I've selected all three of them, but the dragon main was the last one I selected. For now, the lock camera to view, we can turn that off for a minute. So we select them in this order. You can really select them in any order, but dragon fire first, then dragon light, then finally dragon main. We'll move over to the viewport and press Control P, Control and P, and then we'll click on object here. So basically what that's done is it's kind of grouped all of these together. This one has become the main object. So if we rotate this one, the light and the fire will rotate with it, those objects that are embedded inside this dragon. So if I click on the dragon and press R to rotate on the Z axis, all three of those objects are rotating because I selected this dragon last, right? I selected this one first, second, then third, then I did Control P to parent them. So this object becomes the main object and these other two will follow it. So if I click on the light one and drag it, it moves by itself. We don't want that. So we want to click on this main dragon and we've got the record button ticked off here. We're going to move to the viewport and press I and insert a location and rotation. So we'll click here and that inserts a keyframe here, you can see in yellow. And we want to scrub along this timeline to around frame 100. And on frame 100, we want to tell Blender that we want to rotate this dragon. And you should still have the transformer open, so press N if you don't have it open. And we want to rotate on the Z axis 1080. And then we'll untick the record button. And now we can see this dragon spinning 180 degrees, right? So it's going to rotate 4 times, I think, or 3 times. My maths isn't great, but it's going to rotate around 1080, keep spinning, and then it's going to stop on this 100 frame. And then we want to do something with this 140, but really I don't want the camera to be still during this period, right? So on the first frame, we'll hit the record button again. This time we'll select the lock camera to view, and we'll move to this space here, and we'll press I. So let's make sure the camera is selected. Make sure the camera is selected here, up here. Then we'll move to the viewport and we'll press I and insert a location and rotation for the camera. So we'll move to frame 110, and because we've got the lock to camera, we can actually rotate the camera now. So the dragon is spinning this direction. It's spinning anti-clockwise, right? So what would be cool if the camera rotates in this direction to somewhere like here. And if we rotate back, right, so this is going to spin this way, the dragon's spinning this way, and the camera's going to rotate to this direction. Then we're going to move to frame 140, and that's kind of like your end frame. So you can do whatever you want here. I'm going to rotate it back around to like this angle, zoom in using my mouse wheel, and then just position it. You can hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom more accurately, right? Like this. So if I press F12, I know that that's going to be my last frame. So that's what the dragon is going to look like in the very last frame. And now we just need to improve the smoke and fire. This fire and smoke, we want to make it much higher resolution. So that's pretty much me done with the animation. Let's just see what it looks like. So it's going to be something like this. I think that's okay. So we'll go to the first frame. We'll go to File, Save As, and we'll save it as version 4. Then we can turn off the lock to camera. Always turn this off if you're not using it. If you're not going to position the camera or move it or do anything with it, always untick this. Because when you middle mouse click and rotate now, you're rotating the viewport rather than rotating the camera by accident. So let's press N on our keyboard. That closes down that widget thing on the side, the transformer. We'll press 0 to see what the camera sees. We're in our first frame. Let's just go to File, Save. We'll click on the smoke domain here. Smoke domain. And let's see. We need to free the bake. It's going to bake to 100 frames. So I reckon we're going to bake it further down. We're going to bake it to like 110. I'm going to increase the bake so the fire simulation and the smoke will keep going on to 110 frames. Then what I want to do, I'm going to actually bake this low resolution. So I want to do a few things here first. So on the first frame, I'm going to hit the record button and I'm going to go back to the Dragonfire here, Dragonfire. And I'm going to move my mouse over to density here. And I'm going to press the letter I to insert a keyframe here, and in the flame rate I'm going to also insert the letter I. So I've got two keyframes positioned on the first frame. I'm going to move across the timeline to 110. Let's see, 110. Yeah, I think 110 will be good. And then on the density I'm going to press the letter I but set it to 0. And then on the flame rate I'm going to press the letter I and set that to 0. So basically what we're doing is we're telling Blender at the very beginning we want a lot of fire, or at 1, set at 1. And if we untick this record button, if we look at these settings here, as we scrub back down the timeline you can see they're going to increase. So as over this duration the smoke and the fire are going to decrease until they get to 0, 0 here, and then the flame and the smoke will disappear basically, right? In theory. So if we go back to the smoke domain, it's still set to quite a low resolution, but we should really test this. So we'll go to bake all dynamics and it's going to bake it really fast, right? So if we go back to the first frame and play it, we should see that smoke and fire. If you notice, it will like fade out to nothing, right? So that's what we want. We want to see loads of smoke and fire, and then it will get to the end frame and it will just be the dragon on its own. So that's how we can almost manipulate or animate the fire and the smoke to a certain degree, right? Okay, so now all we need to do is click on the smoke domain, go to File, Save, and we'll go to Free Bake, and we're going to set this to this resolution. Now this really depends, right? I would say at around 120, after 120 my computer starts to struggle. It just takes way too long to bake the fire and the smoke. But if you've got a really powerful computer, you've got loads of RAM, you've got a really good processor, you can set this to a much higher value, and the higher this value the better the fire and the smoke will look, the resolution of it, right? It's going to look much better. So you need to experiment, maybe try and set it to 120, bake it off and see how long it's taking. If it's taking way too long, then you can reduce this setting here, and that will bake it faster, but the quality will be less. And we need to scroll right down to the bottom and go to the high resolution here, tick this off and set it to 2. You can set this to a high value as well, but normally I set it to 2. I haven't got the most powerful machine, so my computer starts to struggle if I set this to a higher setting and set this to, if I set this to something like 200, it just takes way too long. I'm a bit too impatient for that. Then one other thing we can do for now is we can go to the viewport samples and we can set this to something like 90, and the render samples will set to 120. And then in the volumetrics, we'll set the tile size to 4. You can set it to 2. For me, 4 kind of works well on my machine. 2 is quite high. Again, depending on your machine, it will depend on, you know, what sort of tile size you can use, but that's for the render. This is after we actually complete the smoke and fire simulation. When we're rendering it out, the higher the tile, or the lower the tile size, the better quality you're going to receive. Samples I'm going to set to something like 120, and then I'm going to tick off volumetric shadows here and set this to 90. Let's go to File, Save. And really these settings here are for when we actually do the final render. Screen space reflections, we don't need any of these things, right? So we'll just leave all these off. We're going to go back to the physics. We're going to click on the smoke domain. I'm going to go make a cup of tea, and I'm going to click bake all dynamics. And we can see that, look, it's taking a bit of time, right? It's going to take about 4 or 5 seconds to render out each frame, and as it gets further down the timeline and as the smoke and the flames become more complicated, it's going to take longer to bake out those frames. So I'm going to pause the video here and wait for this to bake out, and we'll come back and check it. Okay, so Blender's finished baking the fire and smoke simulation. Took a bit of time to do that, so I normally go to File, Save, and then we can scrub through this. The blender's going to move a little bit slow, right? It's not going to be super fast or anything, but we get an idea of what that smoke of fire is going to look like. If we go to a frame like this and we press F12, we can render out the frame. It's worth having a little look before you go and render out all of your frames, so you get an idea of what that fire and smoke might look like in the final render. So are we happy with this? Can we improve it? Can we change it? I think it looks pretty good. I think the end result is going to look very good. But one thing we might want to do is go back into the shading here, and we can tweak our colors now because we've got this reference image. So in here you can play around with the colors a bit more. You can move them and that will affect the smoke and the fire. So you can play around with this and see what works for you. We might change this purple to a different color. Get some green in there. It's a bit hard to see, but you will see it during the animation sequence. I think I'm going to leave it pretty much as it is. We'll go back to the layout. You can click the play button, but it's going to run really slow. So we should probably go to around frame 98, where it's getting closer to finishing off. And then we get our end part of the sequence. So now all we need to do is render it out. So let's just go to File, save it. We'll pause this. We'll go back to the first frame. We'll go to the output settings here. And we're going to leave all of this, set it to 30 frames a second. We'll set the PNG to an AVI JPEG. And we'll click on this directory. We'll set it to RGB as well. Leave it at 90%. We'll click on this directory, go to the desktop, we'll go to the folder where the dragon is, our work, we'll click accept, then we'll just press Control and F12. Now Blender will render out each of the single frames. You can see the render samples up here, so it's doing all 120 samples for each of the single images to make the final video sequence. So again, this is going to take a bit of time. Normally I just leave this doing it in the background while I'm doing something else. So I'll pause the video for now and we'll come back and check what the final video looks like. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all the 140 frames. We can see 140 here. We'll close down this frame here and we've got Blender here. So let's just go to File, Save, and we'll close this as well. We can open up this folder and inside here we've got the AVI file it just created. So we can open it up and then we can see what this looks like. Let's just set that to repeat. So I think it came out pretty well. I think I like the smoke and the dynamics and everything behind it. I think it looks pretty cool. I think maybe some of the settings were not quite right because I don't really, you can see some sort of fire coming up, but maybe I need to look at that again because I don't really see fire, right? But it still looks good. So that's how we go about creating this 3D model. Really this animation part was just a little extra thing. It was more to do with turning that SVG into this 3D shape, and I think it looks pretty good. So I don't know what you think. I don't know how your one came out. Hopefully it looks pretty good as well. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I might come back and look at it again one more time and get this fire to look better, because we don't really see much fire in this particular render. It is there though, so let's just check it. We can pause it and see if we can see any sort of fire coming off of this. You can see the flames here, right? So there are flames in there. You can see them around the edge here. They're just not so prominent, so you probably see a lot more at the beginning, but it looks like that smoke is covering a lot of it as well. So yeah, I think it looks okay though. It looks pretty cool. So hopefully your one came out good as well. And that's about it for this particular tutorial. Okay, let's close this down. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.